Should you bother putting your online course on Skillshare and Udemy? Maybe, but maybe not. So I've been teaching online since 2017 and I did the self-hosted thing, and in a much bigger way, I've done the online marketplace thing, having now taught more than 150,000 students in my online courses across these two platforms. So I want to share my journey with you, but more than that, I really want to dive into some burning questions that people have had for me over the years. Questions like, are Skillshare and Udemy worth it for brand new course creators? And is it actually achievable to make a full-time income purely from online marketplaces like these two platforms? And then what topics are actually profitable on these platforms? And then what are the pros and cons of online marketplaces versus self-hosting your courses? And honestly, perhaps my favorite question of all time, which is how can you utilize online courses to drive more clients into your higher ticket offer, whether you're a consultant, coach, or service-based business, which is something that not enough people are talking about, but it's something that's very exciting. So I'm excited to dive into that. And then at the end, I'm also going to share with you how many hours per month it takes me to manage my new incoming students, which on average, I did the math over the last 3 months. On average, I have 3,964 new students coming into my courses across these two platforms. So more on that in a little bit, but first let's talk about profitability. Because firstly, if you're wondering if what you want to teach has a place on Udemy and Skillshare, the answer is probably yes. I mean, there is actually a course on how to perform your own exorcisms on Udemy. So whatever it is that you want to teach, yeah, there's probably room for it, and there's probably an audience for it on these platforms. There are some restrictions, of course, especially on Skillshare. They have limitations around you teaching things like dating advice, ethical hacking, financial advice, a few other topics. So always make sure to actually check the platforms and their limitations, and they will let you know if what you're planning to teach is not allowed, because your course just won't get approved. But outside of those few limitations, pretty much anything goes. But the question is, will it be profitable? So let's talk about the more boring stuff first, which is the numbers and the revenue stuff and how your payments actually work across these two platforms. So on Udemy, you get a percentage of each sale depending on where that sale comes from. If it comes through your own promotions, you get to keep 97% of that sale. If it comes through any other means, you only get 37%. And in terms of your course price, you do technically set your course price when you're uploading your course. But if you're opting into the Udemy promotions program, which pretty much everybody does, they sort of set the price that your course gets sold at, and this does vary month to month, but generally it sits somewhere between about $20 to $50. So it's not huge, and then you don't really get to control that. So that is a bit of a limitation. Whereas on Skillshare, it functions much more like a Netflix style of course platform, where Skillshare basically gets all the memberships that come in for that month, and they put it into a big pool. They get to keep 80% of that money, and then 20% gets divided up between teachers based on the total number of minutes watched on the platform and the percentage of those minutes that were taught in your courses. So it does mean that, you know, if you've got longer courses or people watch your courses more, you get paid more. You don't necessarily get paid per student. In fact, having a huge amount of students doesn't really matter. It matters how engaged people are with your courses and how much they're watching them. Whereas on Udemy, it's very much people enroll, they pay you whether they watch the course or not. It's not that relevant to your paycheck unless they're on the personal plan on Udemy, which is sort of a similar style to what it is on Skillshare. So with that in mind, you can do research on a platform like Udemy once you're signed up as a teacher to see what topics are actually worth you teaching. Obviously, you want to teach whatever you're comfortable teaching and whatever you have experience with. You don't want to just teach the most profitable course topics, but it's a really good benchmark to see if what you're planning on teaching is actually likely to be profitable on the platform. So you can basically decide what's the topic that you want to teach and what's the language that you want to teach in, and then you'll be able to see what's the sort of highest monthly revenue for a course on that topic, what's the average monthly revenue, and what's the competition, what are the sort of top scoring courses for this category. So With something like digital marketing, it's going to be obviously much, much higher because it's very business related. Whereas with something like meditation or yoga or anything really in the health and wellness space, it will be much lower, especially on a platform like Udemy, which is very sort of business focused. But it's still a really good place to start because it'll tell you whether the course you're planning on creating is likely to actually be profitable on the platform. Now, Skillshare doesn't have this capability to do this kind of research yet, but from what I know about the top performing courses and top selling instructors on the platform, they're largely in the creative space. It's sort of moving more into a business space as well, but largely this platform is aimed at creatives. So even the business and marketing focused courses that are on the platform do best if they're aimed at creatives. Whereas on Udemy, it's probably the exact opposite, where any kind of creative classes and courses wouldn't do as well on Udemy as they do on Skillshare. So that's just something to keep in mind. The platforms are quite different in terms of which types of courses they favor. And then you can also use tools like Eureka that kind of have a bunch of different platforms, not just Udemy and Skillshare, to do this kind of research. So even on their free trial, you can have a look at the course topic you're planning to teach and then actually be able to see how many courses are out there for this topic, what platforms they're on, what kind of ratings the courses have, how much their sort of average monthly earning is, and also your general opportunity score to let you know, is this a topic actually worth creating content around? But can you make a full-time income purely from course marketplaces? It's definitely not impossible, but I'd say it's quite rare in terms of the amount of time and effort it would take to do this. So I think in comparison to self-hosting your own courses where you control how much you sell your course for, you control your funnels, you control everything in the sales process, you know, that can be done quite quickly. And also once you find a system and a promotion method that works on that front, you're able to scale it quite quickly. Whereas this is much more difficult when you don't own the platform that your courses are on, unfortunately. So for context, I started teaching on Udemy in 2017, and in my first month, I made just over $259. And then by the time I started teaching on Skillshare, the first month I made $940, and in the second month I made just over $1,300. So it did jump up quite significantly, and it sort of kept growing from there, whereas my growth on Udemy was much slower. And I do think that I sort of tapped into a bit of a gap in the market on Skillshare, but I also think that, you know, 3 years had gone past since I started teaching on Udemy. So by the time I put something on Skillshare, I was a much better course creator, I was a much better marketer, I was more confident on camera. So there was a lot that went into why those courses were more successful at that time. But what I will say is that it's fortunate and unfortunate that because of this sort of Netflix style theme of Skillshare, production quality really matters on this platform so much more than it does on Udemy, because people are, paying this one big membership and they're constantly taking courses from lots of different creators, and they require a higher quality of content. Even if the value is really good, but your slides are terrible and your audio is terrible and you have no video, it's just not good. It's not good. Whereas on Udemy, I think that stuff matters a lot less. So I will say that, different topics perform better on each platform, and also there's less, I want to say less effort required on Udemy, but just less production value that is required in order for people to take the courses on Udemy than they are on Skillshare. So that's just something to consider. And while I do make, a multi-six-figure full-time income from my marketplace courses, it's taken me years and years and years and lots of revisions of my courses to get to that point. So, I pretty much redo a lot of my best performing courses about every 18 months. And my 2 best performing courses are 8 hours long and 12.5 hours long. So it takes a long time to redo them. So I think if I was starting from scratch today, I would instead do shorter, 1 to 2 hour courses to put on marketplaces that people can finish almost in an afternoon. and get results quicker, and then use those students to build my email list and then sell them onto my bigger, more signature programs or my service-based business, which is something we'll talk about in a little bit. But I would definitely still utilize marketplaces, but in just a slightly different way. You know, I don't think it's achievable to make it 100% or even 90% of your business revenue unless you sort of dedicate all of your time to it, which may not be worth it for a lot of people. But I do think that there's still a lot of purpose that can be had there in somewhere within your sales funnel and your marketing funnel. So for me, you know, it's always been a really big part of my mission to provide high quality, affordable marketing education to people who probably wouldn't be able to afford the like $1,000, $5,000 marketing courses that a lot of other people are selling. So for me, it's made a lot of sense to build a lot of my business on marketplaces and make it really affordable for people in a way that's still profitable for me. But I think if I was starting from scratch and if we're focusing purely on, you know, what makes sense from a profitability perspective, then yes, I would go with smaller, more digestible courses that people can finish, get quick wins, learn about my teaching style, and then hopefully give me their email address in exchange for like a freebie within the course or an extra bonus or something like that, which then allows me to actually get their data and sell them onto my bigger coaching programs or bigger courses. Because at the end of the day, it is really tricky with marketplaces like Skillshare and Udemy, and I have tried, especially as a marketer, I've tried, but you do not own the platform, so it's really difficult to actually scale your business on these marketplaces in an authentic way that's approved by the platforms. There are some dodgy things that you can do that people are constantly pitching me on, but from like a doing right by these platforms perspective, it's really difficult to, for example, run like meta ads to your Udemy courses because you have no way to then feed information back to Meta to say, okay, stop showing my ads to this person. They've actually purchased the course, because you can't put any tracking pixels on these sites. So from an advertising perspective, it just means that you're potentially wasting ad dollars because you can never send information back to your advertising platforms to say, hey, this person bought, or find me more people like the people who are enrolling in my course. You just have no idea. So you can really only run like brand awareness campaigns or traffic campaigns. And I'm not saying it's completely wasting advertising dollars, but it does mean that it's very hard to get visibility on what's working from the marketing side of things. So on that note, I do want to talk about this and some additional pros and cons of marketplaces versus self-hosting. So like we already talked about, yes, I think it's a pretty big con that you, one, don't own any of your student data, and two, you have no control over the pricing of your course. And also on the advertising front, or even with organic marketing, you do not own the site, so you have no idea where your students are coming from, what efforts are really working for you. All of that is much, much trickier. So you have a little bit of visibility on this, especially on Skillshare, where if people sign up to Skillshare using your referral link, you can see where your referrals are coming from some of the time, most of the time, probably about 50% of the time. And then on Udemy, you also have some transparency in terms of seeing, you know, what search terms people are putting into Udemy to find your course. If they're coming from external sources, where are they coming from? You have some visibility on that, but again, it's probably about 50% of the time that you actually see what's going on. So in terms of that really nice, you know, Google Analytics, for all of my analytics nerds, you know, all that beautiful flow of this person saw this ad and then they bought the course and now they're a customer. We don't have any of that. But the big pro is that unlike with self-hosted courses, you have no upfront cost. It doesn't cost you anything to put your courses on these platforms. You also don't technically need to have any sort of email marketing service or anything else. And these platforms will actually even promote your courses for you if they think that they're good on platforms like Google and YouTube, which is a huge plus, so you don't have to do your own advertising. And they also deal with customer service and refunds and all of the million things that would take up an infinite amount of my time if I had to manage it for 150,000 people, if I had that many students through a platform like Teachable, Thinkific, or Kajabi, or basically any other self-hosted platform. So maybe that's really just scratching the surface in terms of the pros and cons. And let me know in the comments if you have any further questions about this, or if you'd like a more detailed video on the topic. But now I really want to talk about how you can utilize online courses on marketplaces to get more clients for your coaching business or as a service provider. So people often assume it's one or the other, but just like YouTube, online courses can just be a great way to get inbound leads for your business. So for example, for me with marketing, honestly, most solo or small business owners start with the DIY method to marketing, which is why they often end up in my courses. But then imagine if at the end of the course, I then say, look, it's amazing that you've taken this course, because even if you decide to outsource your marketing, you now know what it takes to build a great marketing campaign. You also know how long things take. You can also manage your expectations in terms of timelines and results, and you know what to look for in a great marketer because you can ask them the right questions. And then if I said, hey, by the way, you can hire me and my team to do your marketing for you, it's kind of a no-brainer, because by that point, they've learned to know, like, and trust me enough to do that. Because a lot of the time people are there to educate themselves, but they don't necessarily want to become a marketer, because if they become a marketer in their business, they stop doing the things that only they can do, which is to actually run the business. So that works for pretty much any niche. If you're a health coach or a health and wellness coach or a yoga coach or, a life coach, and you've got an online course where you're sort of taking people through how to manage stress as a small business owner. Again, small business owner stuff is on my mind, but it can be for anyone really. But then, you take them through the methods and the strategies, and they get a bit of a quick win from that particular course. But then at the end, you mentioned you also do one-to-one sessions with clients. You would honestly be surprised at how many people who pay $10 to $20 for a course on something like Udemy are willing to give you $500 to $1,000 for tailored, one-on-one personal coaching advice. People don't think that trajectory makes sense, because they think, whoa, that's a huge financial jump. But it really doesn't necessarily mean that people are on Udemy or Skillshare because they don't have the money for bigger courses. It just means that maybe they found a course that really appealed to them and it just happened to be a bargain. So don't discount that as a strategy to bring a lot of value to your business. No, you may not ever become a full-time course creator, where you get purely passive income from all your Udemy courses. I mean, you absolutely might, but chances are, that is a much harder path. But don't discount the power of online courses to still bring a lot of money and success to your bigger business. And I do offer affordable mentoring session for aspiring and existing course creators where we can dive into this in much, much more depth. So more information on that in the description of the video if you're interested. And now I also want to briefly talk about the time that's involved in maintaining this kind of business. So I have an average of 3,964 new students enrolling in my courses per month across these two platforms, and those students are consuming an average of 442,562 minutes per month. No, I could not memorize that huge number, but all of that is to say, it takes me roughly about 2 hours a week or about 8 to 9 hours per month to manage everything. And that includes new students, it includes existing students. So obviously I have students who took my courses in the past who are retaking them. So let's say around just under 10 hours per month is how long it takes me to manage that. And the reason I wanted to mention that is because I think people assume that because you're going for the volume game with these platforms, you've got a lower ticket offer, but you're trying to get a huge number of students or a higher number of students into your courses to kind of make the income that you want, versus on a self-hosted platform, obviously you have more control over the pricing. Let's say you set it at $900 per course, so you need to have way less students to make up the numbers. People assume that because you're going for the volume game, you're going to spend all of your time managing these people. And the truth is that even though, for me, for example, I have a project or an assignment component to all of my courses, but a very small percentage of people actually ever do these projects or assignments. I also really encourage people to ask me questions as they're learning in my courses. Again, a lot of people don't really do that. A lot of people just Google things instead of asking me, because they also know, it might take me a few days to reply. So yeah, it doesn't actually, and this could be different for other course creators, so this is just my own personal, firsthand experience, but it doesn't take that long to actually manage it from the, student engagement perspective. So that's just something to keep in mind, because I think that scares a lot of people off. If they're like, what if it goes gangbusters and I get 100,000 students in my course? How do I manage that? Do I then have to hire a team? Again, first-hand experience, my own personal experience, but in my experience, no, you absolutely do not. It's very, very manageable. And it's important to set expectations as well that, you're not able to answer people questions 24/7. You might have a 2, 3, 4 day response time, which then sort of allows people to kind of self-qualify or disqualify themselves and learn to just Google things when they're going to ask you something that they could just quickly Google anyways. So that's just something to keep in mind. Now, I've made a lot of mistakes with my online courses, and one thing I will absolutely say for students on online marketplaces is that they are not afraid of sharing ruthless feedback and hurting your feelings. Much like people on YouTube, they do not care all that much. They just want their feelings heard out in the review universe. And that can be a really terrible thing if you're prone to having your feelings hurt, like I was in the early days, when you're like, this is my baby, how dare you not like it? But it can also really, really benefit you over time, because it makes you into a better course creator, because people will tell you when there's something wrong with your course and they will tell you how to improve. And I'm so, 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 so grateful for that experience. So I am sharing all of the lessons that I've learned from my over 150,000 students across the years in this video over here. So I really hope to see you there.